Thank you as always to those of you who are supporting the channel on Patreon, including the big patrons of the month, the Nerd Therapist, and Jack the Loudred. Thank you. Hey Pokemon Masters, Berkey for Toby here, and okay, you've heard the announcement. Pokemon Home will not be able to transfer any Pokemon that is not in the Galar Pokedex to Pokemon Sword and Shield. So of course, by the Galar Pokedex, I'm not just referencing the new Pokemon that they're introducing, like Grookey and Dreadnought and Corviknight. I'm not just referencing them, I'm referencing any Pokemon that we've already seen in Sword and Shield. I'm talking Lucario, we've seen Machoke, we've seen actually a whole bunch of Pokemon. There has been a lot on trailers, and there is a whole list over on Cerebi.net of what the Galar Pokedex currently looks like. And we had the announcement recently of Pokemon Home, and that you'd be able to send any Pokemon from Let's Go, Pokemon Go, or Pokemon Bank to Pokemon Home. It's a new, improved service, right? And that is going to be the hub of all Pokemon, and you'll be able to send Pokemon from Sword and Shield to there as well. Now, when Pokemon Bank first came out, it was between generations 5 and 6. The idea was to transfer anything that you had on Pokemon Black and White and Black and White 2, and transfer them up to Pokemon X and Y. Pokemon Bank is also a storage system. It's where you keep your Pokemon, and it looks like Pokemon Home is going to be something more than a storage system. The home of Pokemon. It's not just a bank where you keep them. But it seems to me, and to a lot of players who are familiar with using Pokemon Bank in that way, that the main objective is to get the Pokemon from that last game and move it up to the current game. That's the whole point of these things, so that you can carry your teams from Generation 3's Ruby and Sapphire right up to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. That is a way that a lot of fans enjoy it, including myself. And hey, if you've got any like super competitive mons from past generations, well, great, you can transfer them up and you don't have to re-get them. To be fair, you don't have to do that for this one. There's just certain competitive mons you're not going to be able to transfer. But this announcement, the idea that let's say Totodile, for example. I love Totodile. Totodile, as far as we know, currently not in the Galar Pokedex. If you really like Totodile and it's not in the Galar Pokedex, well then sorry, you can transfer it to Pokemon Home, but you will not be able to transfer it to Sword and Shield. And that's kind of disappointing. It's like they've taken away options. Their exact words and sentiments in the thing were that the Switch is a very powerful console, and they want to make every Pokemon look good. They also want to get the games out as quickly as possible, and so they're going to kind of limit the amount of Pokemon that are on the game. They just wanted to get that announcement out there so that people know what to expect, which, to be fair, them doing that at the E3 showcase where they know it's going to be a disappointing message, I can respect them just kind of being upfront about it. But yeah, is it disappointing? Am I disappointed? A little bit. I was a little bit more, and I think there's a lot of fans out there who are very angry, and there are fans in any fandom, not just Pokemon, but there are fans in any fandom that literally just are there to talk about how much they hate the thing. And when they see someone like me, who is generally more positive towards the new games, I know I've been described as being a shill, or just like a Pokemon apologist, just a defender, that kind of thing. You know, I've definitely had things that I don't like about the franchise before. I've made no secret about my distaste of Trace from the last game. Ugh. I've made no secret about that, and before Let's Go was coming out, I made no secret about that. But I was still positive about Let's Go, and when it came out, it was a game that I really enjoyed. And with Sword and Shield, I'm gonna try and be positive, because there are some silver linings to this. And I know that sounds like, what are you talking about, Toby? And don't get me wrong, again, I'm disappointed, but I think it leads to a different dynamic and some new opportunities. So let me just talk about what a few of those are. First of all, like they were saying, they're coming up close to about 1,000 Pokemon now, which is nuts. That means that they probably have a good, like, at least 100 in the new generation, you'd imagine. Okay, so there's a lot of Pokemon coming, and we've now got like 900 Pokemon, and that's a lot of creatures. That's a lot of creatures to integrate into one world. However, if you split that in half and you have about 450, which I suspect that they'll do somewhere between 300 and 600 Pokemon in these games, that's probably a really good roster of Pokemon. Yeah, it's kind of like the Diamond Pearl era or the Black and White 2 era, which is with just really good generations of Pokemon, where there was just like, there was enough creatures, but there wasn't so many where they were worried about releasing, you know, any more than 70 Pokemon, and they were like, okay, well, we need to go back and do Mega Evolutions. Now they're probably going to create more new Pokemon because they're going to bring in less of the old ones. Secondly, with it almost entirely a new roster, it means that the metagame is going to change up dramatically. That is always interesting for people who are interested in competitive. It's no different to the Pokemon card game, the TCG, where they rotate sets out and they're like, cool, you can no longer use these unless you're playing like some kind of massive expanded game. Now you have to, in standard, you use what is the current rotation. They're kind of doing the exact same thing here, and whenever that happens, there are massive shifts in the way that the competitive players get to be creative, try out new things, and see what works. There have been a lot of requests for Pokemon to be patched in as time goes on. I think that's possible. What I am thinking is more likely is when the Diamond and Pearl remakes happen, which is, come on, we know they're gonna happen. When they presumably happen in 2020, if you have about 450 here, you can have the other other 450 there. Maybe at that point there can be some kind of patch update which allows them all to at least exist in competitive together. And that means that we're probably not going to see a lot of Pokemon that you would expect in the Sinnoh decks in the Galar region. That's what I'd assume anyway. I'm not saying that's a definite, like we've definitely already seen like Lucario and Togekiss, but I think most of the Pokemon that exist in the Sinnoh Pokedex probably won't exist within the Galar Pokedex. And that's kind of like how Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire filled out the Pokedex for X and Y. We basically got everything that we didn't get in X and Y, we got it in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. I do wonder about what kind of service Pokemon Home is going to be, and if there's going to be like a game that you can play within Pokemon Home or something. Just because I wonder, why would I transfer something up from Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon into Pokemon Bank and then onto that if I can't do anything with the Pokemon? I think I'd much rather keep it in a game where I can battle and trade. That said, while it's disappointing for some players, including myself, what do I actually do once I've transferred up my Pokemon? Nothing. My living dex just pretty much sits there, and my other teams that I've had from past adventures, they also pretty much sit there. On top of that, this is going to make certain aspects of the game actually quite challenging. I mean, for example, completing the Pokedex. No longer can you just mass transfer over Pokedex and plonk, it's done. You can do it for every Pokemon that isn't a new Pokemon, but some things are actually going to be more challenging, and challenging in a Pokemon game is something that I've always wanted. If it makes a Pokemon game harder, I'm interested. You still can have that experience of catching something in Pokemon Go or Let's Go and wanting it to be your starter, transferring it, of course, just within if it's within that roster of what? Half to a third of the Pokedex? That's still a lot of Pokemon, and if your favorite Pokemon doesn't get love, don't worry about it. The next game, hopefully, they know, and you can just tell in the way that announcement went down, you know that they are also concerned about this announcement, but this is the direction that they want to take it in. Finally, one more thing that I think is worth noting is I think the scary amount of Pokemon there are. When there's nearly like 1,000 Pokemon, that's alienating to new players. That makes the fan base become kind of stale, because unless you've been around for all of those generations of Pokemon, you may not want to play a new Pokemon game. Completing the Pokedex suddenly becomes this ridiculous objective. For you and me, it's great because we love Pokemon, but for outsiders who will one day hopefully become people like you and me, who aren't familiar with all of the Pokemon, they just like some of the Pokemon, people who, like, for example, have been playing Pokemon Go, who maybe don't know all of the Pokemon or which generation they've come from, who didn't do any of that stuff, this for them is maybe a less daunting task. Hey, there's about 300 to 400 Pokemon in the game, this is your roster, this is what you're working with. And hey, I mean, Pokemon games where there was only 150, 250, 300, 400 Pokemon, they weren't bad Pokemon games. I understand the disappointment. It does feel like something has been taken away. What has been taken away is not the be-all and end-all. It's not what's going to make or break Pokemon. And when you put that on the flip side of all the new stuff that we're getting, the Wilds area, this incredible looking game, this region that just looks like it's going to be absolutely incredible, I'm not too worried. When we're getting new Pokemon designs that are as successful as this lot, no, you Zamazenta, you get the weird neck thing. You got designs that look like this lot? Just last week Wooloo was announced, and already it's like the most loved thing on the internet. When you've got new designs coming in like that, and hopefully a bigger roster than the last two generations, because they're not worried about hitting that 1,000 number, which you can tell in the past they really have been, where you can tell that they're not going to feel the need that they have to integrate in like Alolan forms and Z crystals and Mega Evolution and cram them into every game so that they can stay consistent with the lore of the past games and everything else. I think, well, yes, this could be a little bit disappointing. This could provide for a new type of Pokemon experience. So I'm not going to roam around the internet saying, yeah, Pokemon is doomed, Sword and Shield is rubbish, because I know that trailer that I saw last week got me more hype than I think any other Pokemon trailer I've ever seen ever has. With Let's Go, I remember this feeling of like, okay, I'm treading on eggshells when it comes to the internet. I've got to explain and justify why I like each individual thing. After seeing that first trailer, I can very confidently say, this is going to be a good Pokemon game. And yeah, okay, this announcement, it's a little blow. And I really wish they had announced some other new Pokemon with it, just to kind of give us a little bit of hope of like, oh, but look, it's going to be fun. That all being said, I'm personally one of these fans where, and you might want to call me a fanboy, I don't know, I wouldn't, I'm definitely always like, hey, if I see something I don't like, I do talk about it. And actually, I'm going to be talking about Hop in an upcoming video, I'll give that a little mention soon. But yeah, with all that being said, I try to be positive about these things because I like the franchise, and thus far, the games that the franchise has given me, I've enjoyed on mostly. Have there been things I haven't liked? Yes. Have I talked about those things? Yes. So I'll let you know if there's anything I think you should actually be worried about, but this right now, let me know what you think, of course, about the new changes in the comments. Of course, I've done a recent video about the mini theories and that kind of thing, and I'm going to do a video on Hop very, very soon. And of course, so hi Pokemon Masters.
This is Ash Ketchum. You just watched a video by Birdkeeper Toby. That makes you a Pokemon Master!